Hi all, so today we are going to start modeling our full model in Rhino, and basically we'll use something like similar to this. We'll start with primitives, which is the solids. Basically we'll go from solids, we'll start with curves in order to create solids, and then perhaps we'll go into surfaces in order to extrude and create these kind of forms, more non-regular forms. Basically, our full model is basically on kind of pieces of foam, and that's what we are trying to replicate. So I'm going to turn off this one, and we'll start something from scratch, and we'll see how it goes. So turn off the layers, and so we can start basically in order to create. If you measured your model, you go to curve tools, and you can start recreate with either polylines or rectangles. You can start recreate the tool. So if you write the command polyline, it will pop up, but it's also here. It's this one. So basically, the commands are always, what you need to do is always answer once you click on a button in Rhino or hit a command. Just answer the question. Start the polyline. I always like to start with a grid snap and snap to close to 0, 0, 0. If you want to give it a specific coordinate to the polyline, you'll start go and you give if it would be 0, 0, 0. So that means that's x, y, z values. Press enter, and it immediately snaps to that point. So it doesn't need really to snap to grid if you don't want to. Then you give the next point of polyline, or you just give a dimension, and let's put 90. So let's make a box with 9 centimeters long, and I cannot 9. Press enter, press shift, and you see now that here the black where the hotspot is actually the 9 value, and the white line is just a direction that's going to show. So we go 9, and then I'll give you another dimension of 70. Press enter, the same thing, and go 90. Try to go back. Press shift, and it will give you this. If you want, you can close it. If you click here, or you write a command close, and you'll be certain that you'll be a closed curve like this. So if you select a curve, it will pop up closed curve. So that's one way of doing it, and the second, and this would be the recommended way, because it will allow you to design any kind of forms. To do it, you can also have rectangles. So actually, you don't need to always to go. If you know it's a rectangle, you can actually use the command which is down here, rectangle, and press enter, and then it will ask you first corner of the rectangle. It's exactly the same thing. You can put, let's put it in another base point. Start it from another base point. So I'll put it away from. So I'll put 110, comma. 0, 0. So x, a value of 110, which is more or less, is going to pop up more or less there. Hey, there you go. And then it will ask you the length of our rectangle, and you put 90 as it was, and the width, and you put 70, and you'll get exactly the same type of rectangle. So that's basically how you can curves. It's very much the same type of elements. So, and obviously the rectangle, because it's rectangle, it starts with a closed curve. So the next part would be, I'll release that one, but use this one, will be go to surface tools and extrude. So that extrusion is create a surface out of those curves, and that's very common, and there are many types of extrusions in Rhino, and that's types of procedures like this, and it's recommended because if you start with a curve, you can always modify it later. So press extrude curve, and this will be actually it's in the surface tools, and you pop it up here. It's this one, right? The extrude command, and then you have you give the distance. In this case, I would just want to give 1 centimeter, so that will be 10, and press enter. So now you can see that actually there's a box there, but the box is open. So it's not a box, right? So that's not actually what we want. We actually want a closed box. So actually on the extrusion, there's other options that we need to click in. So if you write extrude curve, or select it, and you see in Windows it's here on the command bar, but it has both sides or solid. In this case, we want to make it solid, and the value is already 10. So we press enter, and basically it will give you now a box. So now you can see that this is the extrusion, that's a box, that's a little bit of our styrofoam. So that's a good start. The same thing if you want to use solid tools. There's many solid tools that you can start with, and obviously these are all under the solids, which is also here on the drop down menu. In this case, if you want to draw a rectangle, you start with a box, and that's basically if you want to draw a parallelogram, you write with a box, and that's the command, box, and you start the same thing. You start the first color, so it basically draws the whole box. So I'm going to put the second rectangle like that, 110, 0, 0. So that's where it starts the box, and then read again, other corner of the base, the length. So there I'll go 90, that's what we gave, and the width, so I think it was 70, the center, and the height is going to be 10 again. So that's another way of starting with primitives immediately. So it gives you exactly the same thing, but in this case you have the curve that you can always edit. In this case, if you know it's a primitive, it's fine. So we'll leave the box for now there. It might become useful later on to add to our model for some reason. Another way, if you want to now to bring in, for example, your elevation, you had it, you sketched it, so you can actually bring in those files into Rhino. So you go to View, Background Bitmap, Place, and it will ask you basically what kind of image you want to bring. In this case, we'll go to Desktop, Elevation, and Open. So this is the elevation that you bring in from the start. You can actually snap it to somewhere, but since I don't know where it's going to be, press Shift. No, you don't need to press Shift, but so this is the elevation. Obviously, it's not the same scale as our model, but we can always rescale it. If you go to View again, Background Bitmap, and Scale. So you can always say, oh, okay, so I want to start from here, and pick this point, press Shift to become orthogonal, and say, okay, I'm going to add a few more dimension to it. So obviously now we have the bitmap. You cannot drag it, you cannot select it here, but if you want to move it, you go to View, Background Bitmap, Move, and basically you select, I want to move it from this point to this point, and then you can scale it. Perhaps that would be the best way to do it, and I'll just do it very briefly. Background bitmap, scale again. So I'll start with, I'll disable these ones, I'll zoom into this, so I'll start there. But if you know what's the dimension, that will be the best way, because that will allow you to. So that will be going. Now I'll enable it and snap it to here. So now we have our elevation. We can start basically draw it. So we can trace it. Basically, it's about tracing it. So you go to the curve tools again and use the polyline, and you go polyline, press enter. You can snap to the endpoint here, which snaps to the cube and to the box that you did, and you start tracing it. If you know the value, so this is giving you here, as you can see those values there, it's giving you a 46.8, but if you know it's a 5, you can actually type 5 or 50, and that will snap to that. So it's up to you if you want to follow your drawing or you actually want to trace it. So in this case, what we'll go through it is we'll just go and trace for to be faster, and press Shift in order to get the orthogonals in. And in this case, there's no orthogonal, so closest point better. And you go to the endpoint, and then you close again, or you click here or you click, if it's in Windows, you click up there, you write close, press enter, and it will close the polyline. So now we have the polyline. As you can see, draw it there, which is convenient because now we can actually also draw this rectangle. In this case, I'm immediately going to get the rectangle in because I don't want to draw a polyline. I'll just click on the rectangle or write the command rectangle and just trace it, right? So, but again, if you know the dimensions, that will be the correct way to do it. So what this allows us to do, as I can see, I'm drawing here, but it's actually creating everything in 3D because I'm drawing on the front plane. So if you want to extrude this, extrude curve, and then it will obviously will give you immediately the distance. And since already I'm happy with the 10, I'm just going to press enter and it'll give you 10. Now we need to punch a hole here. And to punch a hole, you can also do a box out of this size and intersect, and that will create. That's one way of doing it. You go. So if you want to select that, you can also extrude curve, extrude curve, and again, it needs to be a solid in order to minimize. So it doesn't really matter. We just want to use this box in order to basically cut the surface. So you select this, you can actually move it around. I use the gumball, and you don't need any precision, it's just dragging. And basically what you want to see is that it is going to be intersecting all the box, all right? So that's critical. So now what you go from, again, we'll jump into the solid tools. So that's where you draw the boxes and everything. There's on the top element, and if you go to solid, it's the same thing. On the solid, there's all these union, difference, and booleans, which is here actually in the beginning. So actually what we want to do is, in this case, extract or split. It could be both, but in this case you want the difference. So what we are going to extract something. So in this case you are going to take off, subtract out of elements. So you click on boolean difference, and it will ask you which kind of surfaces do you want to subtract from. So I want to subtract from this one, and which ones you want to subtract with, and I select my box. That's my basically cut-off shape. So and that basically opens you these elements, right? So that's one way of trying to manipulate. So any kind of curves, anything will allow you to do it. So another thing to actually try to, now that we have this, is to move elements. So we can add more little pieces to your foam model, and I'm basically going to try to, and I'm going to, now that I draw my my elevation, I'm going to just extract this one, view, background, make map, remove, and it disappears. So now I don't have anything in the element. Again, I'm going to now to add this. I know it was not part of the original, but it doesn't really matter, just for tutorial purposes. I'm going to use and try to move this surface into that displacement, right? And basically you can actually also start drawing a surface out of that, and I'll start from there on, but I'll show you both ways, like either editing or creating from there. So let's start with the curves again, and pick up on a polyline, and just snap to that element. So this object snaps needs to be on. If you don't turn it on, the command is object snaps, osnap actually, osnap, right? And you can just turn it on, and you can, these endpoints start to pop up. So I'm only using the endpoint and the midpoint. Don't use all of them, otherwise you can snap to everything that's basically in the drawing. So basically I'll start doing on this kind of curve, and say, okay, so this is my curve, and the next point of the polyline, I don't know, but you can also put, I say it's going to be, I know it was 90, so let's put 90. Oh, sorry. So polyline, start point of the polyline is going to be this one, and next point of the polyline is going to be 90. because that's the dimension. So now you know that's going to be, it's correct, the dimension that I had. Don't press shift. You can snap into this point here, because that will give you the alignment, right? So that's what we're going to do. So that's basically it. And if you want now to use a perpendicular line, you can. It just actually, the snap, since the snap object snaps are on, it will just give you that. So I'm going to use that. Then press enter, and now, oops, it came off. Anyway, so if you don't have that, you can always basically copy this this line into another parallel element, and that's another thing that we're going to go, and it's called offset. It's very common, and it's this one, this tool here called offset, and basically it will copy this line, and you say the distance is going to be 10, press enter, and then you choose the distance, and you see it's perpendicular to what it was. So now basically you have that, and you just need to join those lines. So basically connect this to that, press enter, and this one to that one. All right, press enter. Now the problem here is that they're all independent lines, so it's always good to join them. So what you generally do to make one closed curve, you just hit the command join. You join all the curves that are part, and to select into one, you select 1, 2, 3, 4, and it immediately says 4 curves join into one closed curve. So now if you click it, basically it's this element. So it's very much that. So if you want to now to extrude this, you can extrude it. So extrude curve, go back, and you say, oh, it was, I believe, you can snap it to here because it allows you, or you can just give the extrusion, which I believe it was 70, press enter, and there you go. So, you know, that's one way of doing the elements, and I just want to know, now that that one is there, I'm going to place this piece, and I'm going to move it and rotate it and make it used on this wall, for example, just for the sake of having to edit the model itself. So if you want to have to move this, basically what we need to do is there's the move command again on the transform tools, and then we'll scale it down to fit better into this area. So what we want to do is move this area. So I'm not going to use the gumball because it's never precise. Just for practical reasons I use the gumball. So move, press enter. I'm going to add this point here, to snap that point to here, and basically it will move that part into this that part into this alignment. So now what we can do is basically also again move this point, because you want to rotate it on top and become a wall. Actually, let's rotate it immediately. So let's rotate this, which is also in the transform. So this is the move, this is the rotation, there's the copy, there's the scaling, and there's the mirroring. So there's all these elements that you can actually start working from. So in this case, I'm going to rotate, pick that point of rotation, the first angle of reference, and then you basically move it up. Press shift again, and there we go. So now we actually move this wall into that point, and actually we are done pretty much. So you can move, and if you want to know if you can do it, if it's snappable to a certain point, is good. If not, it's exactly the same thing. You can actually move the coordinates 0, 10 to something like that. So that's good. So I'm happy now. So this is basically our model. I just want to make it a little shorter here on the top area, or no, actually this area I'll leave that height, but I want to make this length to be smaller. So for that I'm going to use another transform tool, which is the scale, and the scale is this one, which is always in the transform tools. But in scale, there's a few things that I would like to tell you. So if you choose just scale, what happens to this is that everything will shrink. Actually, I just want to shrink one side. So that's what we need to look into. But so actually the scale doesn't really look, because if I would scale, select objects to scale, press enter, and base point, let's say that one there. And if I would scale down from here to here, sorry, yep, you see that even the wall thickness is scaling, and we don't want that. Actually, what we want to do is use the other. There's two more scales, and what we want to do is scale 1D or scale 2D. And in this case, what we want to scale is x and Y. So and that's what we are going. Actually, only one. So actually, want to only to scale this area. So we only want to scale one dimension. So that's scale 1D. Right? Select object to scale, press enter, and bring it to here. Click there and snap it to that point, and there you go. All right. If you want to edit something to this, you could actually again do any kind of forms and try to. So in this case, I'm going to use this, let's say, curve, and try to. Sorry, going through here. So like this, it's any kind of forms would allow you, and I'm going to close it. Close again, and then extrude is exactly the same thing. Extrude, extrude curve, and then intersect with this form basically, and again, it's the same thing. Go to the transform tool, transform tools, transform. Here we are. And you can just move it around. One thing is to move both the curve and the solid, and that's what I'm going to do. Move and just to make it intersecting well, and then again the same thing. You can Boolean tool and you select. So let's go transform. Solids, or go solid tools here. And in the solid, you go again difference or split if you want. It's the same. It works the same. You just need to delete, press or trim in as well. There's also the trim tool, which exactly does similar. So select cutting objects. In this case, it asks what you want to cut with first, and objects to cut. And press enter. Sorry, that's not the part I wanted to cut. This was the part I wanted to cut actually. So the trim works that way. Select object to trim with, and then select this part. Sorry, there you go. And then you get that form as well. One thing which is useful and I recommend to use is with lines, is because okay, so it gave you this problem here. So perhaps trim is not ideal. Let's say if trim doesn't work, let's try and do the Boolean again. So Boolean, and select Boolean surfaces. Oh, sorry, it's need to go back to the. I still have it cut it. I didn't undo. Okay, so if you go to the Boolean, it will ask you select surface to subtract from this one and subtract with this one. Press enter. Let's see if it is going to do it. Yep, and that did work. So the trim didn't. This one does. So it's always, but it allows you to do the same kind of operations. One thing that's also interesting is if you are using curves, and because you have these points, you can also actually modify them. So let's say, no, actually, no, this one doesn't really matter, but actually these points were better to be done here, and so I'm going to make it a little bit wider, and again, obviously now it it snapped, but so that's because we didn't. Let's move it. Always use these ones here and disable these elements if you are not tracking to anything. Press enter. You know, if I want to modify it and say, oh, okay, actually this curve was more like here, and I want to make another addition here. So I want this to be even a bit more sharp. So it allows you to draw again. Always draw in the orthogonal if you don't want, and then extrude again the curve and do exactly the same procedure. And so that's why I recommend basically to use curves and then use the same element. So you want to subtract this one, and with this one press enter, and there you go. Right. So if you use curves, it allows you to modify. If you use solids, it's a different situation. You can actually also use that. In this case, if you don't see these points opening up, is the command is edit point on, and then it will show you all the points in the curve actually. All right, and then you can use the gumball to modify, or you actually can also give coordinates and modify the curve. Once the curve is done, everything is deleted, so you need to redo it if you want to add another form. Another thing is if you wanted to also to see these points on the curves, so this edit point on is for the curve itself. You see, you can modify the curve itself. If you want to do it on the surface, it's also possible. Select surface and solid point on. That will allow you to show all the points of this surface. So if you want, oh, actually this part is going to be higher, I don't know, 10 centimeters or whatever you want, and you just can start doing it. Also be careful doing this. You can, the orthogonal views generally do a better job. If you click one point, this will, in 3D, this might give you an kind of different results. As you can see, Rhino will still do it, but it will create these kind of weird shapes. So be careful with that. But you can still actually, if you select all the points in the same kind of direction, you can actually still move them around and still have the same kind of different curves or things like that. Okay, so this is how we do the full model, and thank you very much.